Some people call it Haggai, but it's Haggai. That's what I like to call it. It's one of your minor prophet books. So it's one of those books we don't look at very often. But it's an important book because it teaches us quite a bit. The book of Haggai. It's a very short book. It's the second shortest book of the entire Old Testament. It's a book which speaks of a situation over a period of 3 months. And so we'll look at that here in just a little bit more here in a few seconds. But as we look at this idea of priority, we see in the book of Haggai how God's people need to keep the right thing the right thing. As a matter of fact, when you look at people, you see one of the most important things as far as successful people is their priorities are placed in the right spot. Now, there's a book. It's an old business book, if you will, written by E.M. Gray. And it's a book which you can find almost free online now, since it's an older book. But it's a man who spent quite a bit of research and quite a bit of time trying to figure out what it is that makes people successful. What is it that determines whether somebody succeeds in business and whether somebody does not succeed in business? What is it that makes a sports star be able to get to the professional level and yet other people don't quite get there? What is it that allows a person in politics to do so well in elections and other people, they don't seem to do as well? And you and I could ask that sort of thing. What is it? Well, hard work is necessary, but it's not always hard work being the deciding factor. A lot of people have to have good luck. You know, certain things just have to fall just the right way. But that's not the way it always is. For some people, it's the ability to communicate, social skills. They've got to know how to relate. They've got to know how to make connections. But E.M. Bounds said that's not really what it always was either. What is the number one trait of successful people across all categories? It's the fact that their priorities are in the right place. It's this idea of their priorities being in the right spot, that they put the main thing as the main thing, that they do not get distracted, that they do not allow the life situations which go on so often to knock them to the side. Priorities. That's what you've got to get right if you're going to be a success in business, if you're going to be a success in sports, if you're going to be a success financially, if you're going to be a success socially, if you're going to be a success with the Lord, you've got to have the priorities in the right spot. Now, as we think about E.M. Bounds' book, we are reminded of an even greater book about priorities and about what it takes to make a successful person. And that book is the Bible. And so as we look here in the book of Haggai, we see a certain situation, a political situation is going on that we're not always aware of. Remember in 586 BC, the Babylonians came and destroyed the city of Jerusalem and took all the Israelites over into captivity. And as these people were in captivity, they spent 70 years under the yoke of bondage. Of course, those last few years, they were under the yoke of the Persians and the Medes, and then they were sent home. Well, as they arrived back in Jerusalem, some people weren't really happy to see them. You see, they had been taken captive, and their houses and their temple and their city was completely empty. And so people from around, we would know them later in the New Testament as Samaritans, moved in. Well, if you leave a spot, say in a lunch line, or you leave a spot, maybe it's a church pew, and you leave and you come right back, you could say, hey, that's my spot. And people say, yes, that's right. I remember you were here. Okay. But remember, the Israelites had been gone for 70 years. That's 3 generations. People had lived in these empty houses and sold these empty houses to other people. Other people had inherited these houses. They had changed these houses. They thought these houses belonged to them. And so when the Jewish people came back home, suddenly they found their home was no longer their home. So, according to the Persians, they were able to push the Samaritans out, but the Samaritans sure did not want to leave. They didn't want the Jewish people to have political power any longer. They were afraid of what danger might be there, and they were jealous because they just lost their homes to these Jewish people. And so when the Israelites returned to build the temple that we see of in Haggai, and later to build the wall around Jerusalem that we see in Nehemiah and Ezra, they oftentimes had people who didn't want them to do that. And so they would attack them, and they would embarrass them, and they would intimidate them. And it was a hard fight. Just before, in the days of Haggai, about 5-10 years before, they had started building the temple, and of course, war broke out. Battles and guerrilla warfare and things such as that. And the temple had stopped. Well, now there's a time of peace, and so people have built their houses quite a bit. And as they've built their houses together quite a bit, the prophet Haggai said, wait a second. I understand it was hard earlier to build a temple, but there's an issue when your houses look nice, when you're comfortable building your own place, and God's temple is left unfinished. There's a problem in life when we take care of ourselves. We say, it's not time yet to work on God's kingdom. It's not time yet to work on my spiritual relationship. I remember how things used to be, and so we're just going to leave that in that box or over in that place. And so that's where we see the connection to E.M. Bound's book and the book of Haggai. That's where we see the connection of Haggai to you and I today as we look at ourselves and ask ourselves, are we living in paneled houses? Are our priorities in the right place spiritually? So let's look and see what Haggai would teach us today. The first thing he would say, looking in Haggai chapter 1 and verse 2, is stop making excuses. Stop making excuses. Notice what these people would say, Haggai chapter 1 and verse 2. The time has not yet come, the time has not yet come for the house of the Lord to be built. They supported it, and they thought it was something that needed to be done. Yes, that temple needs to be built. Yes, we love God. Yes, there's something that's important there, but the time is not here yet. It was not something which was on the top of their list of priorities. Benjamin Franklin, a founder of our country, wrote many proverbs, and one thing that he said is, I have never known a man who was good at making excuses who was good at anything else. What Benjamin Franklin says is, if you can make an excuse, you probably haven't done anything else that's there. Ooh, how often does that happen? You see, we rationalize, you and I, sometimes spiritually. We say, well, yes, the house of the Lord needs to be built. Yes, I need to get things right with God. Yes, I need to live a certain way. Yes, I need to be at church. But my kids' sports team, they need to do something like this, and we'll just miss a little bit. There's a lot of things going on. I'm so busy. Man, Saturday I worked all day, and church is really early. When life slows down, then I'll get myself back in church. Then I'll get involved once again. Then I'll do what I need to do. Then I'll make things right whenever this happens or that happens or whatever else. Paul stood before a Roman official in Acts 24, verse 25. And as Paul was preaching, you see, he was supposed to be defending himself, but every time Paul had an opportunity, he preached the gospel. He began preaching. And the man said back to him, Paul, are you trying to convert me? And Paul said, I wish you were just like me, except for the chains. I wish you would obey the gospel. The man thought about it, and he said, perhaps at a more convenient time, I will call you back and we'll make things right with God. According to secular history, we don't see any record of that convenient time coming. But what about us today? Have you made an excuse of why you're not right with the Lord now? Are you making excuses of why you're still doing certain things that you should not be doing? Do you have excuses? And sometimes these are good things. Your children, your job, your hobbies, they're good things. They're hopefully temporary things. But have you allowed the things of this world to crowd out your relationship with God? You see, the time has come for us to stop making excuses. Now we go down a little bit later, looking there in Haggai chapter 1, verse 2 again, and we see that it's time for us to stop being selfish. We shouldn't be selfish. Look what he says, the prophet. Is it time for you to live in your paneled houses while the Lord's house lies in ruins? Now, for us, it seems strange. Paneling, generally as a decorating thing, is something which is of days past. You know, that was in the last century where people would put up paneling all over their houses. But you see, back at this time, that was the last step that you did in decorating a house back in these days. And what Haggai is saying is, you know, you're so busy, and yes, you're under threat of war and everything else, but you sure take care of yourself before you take care of God. Now, as you look at this, realize, be careful where we apply it. We're not talking about having a fancy church building. And we're not saying it's wrong for you to live in a nice house, in a nice neighborhood. But here is what we are saying. Be very careful that your habits don't show your selfishness. It's not an attack on having a nice place to live, but it's a conviction of the habits which they have. There are some folks who spend their best time, their best talent, their best hours on themselves, and because of that, there's no time left for God. Because of that, they're not able to put God where God belongs. How many of us have come to a Sunday and it's time for us to give into the collection plate or the collection box, and we just can't do it this week because we're a little short on money, because we had to eat out quite a bit, or there's this bill or that bill, or the kids needed this, or I saw this on sale and I really needed it, whatever it may be. Sometimes we panel our houses to the neglect of the Lord. How often are we so busy on Saturday doing all the different things which are there, and Sunday there's just not enough of us to be able to get to church, and if we're there, there's not enough for us really to worship. We're just a zombie when we're there. How much of us, or how many of us, get so involved with the world and so involved with the world's things that we're so busy that we can't have God in our life? There's not time for daily Bible reading. There's not time for prayer. There's not time to be kind to others, to serve and wash feet, because we've given our best hours, we've given our best dollar, we've given our best passion to things beside God. That's our natural tendency. And this past week, I just planted a garden. It's my favorite time of year because I've just plowed everything. And when you plow everything, all the weeds are dead, and you put the plants in the garden. And it's a one time in the entire year that my garden looks pretty. But all that open earth and open dirt, the next week or two are going to start growing small weeds. And if I don't get after it, they're going to grow a little bigger. And if I don't get after it, they'll grow a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger, until the point where, unless I'm really working, the garden will be overrun and I won't get any produce at all from it. The world hates a vacuum. And so the way the Bible puts it in the book of Colossians is that we have to put to death the old man for the new man to live. You see, if you have a moment or an hour of the day that's open, somehow it's going to get filled. Somehow things are going to come in and take it over. And what you and I have to do in the garden of our heart is take those weeds out so that the Word of God can grow, so the Word of God can do well. Now, you're thinking about Luke 8 in the parable of the soils. You got to remove the rocks. You got to remove the thorns. You got to make the soil soft so that it will produce fruit. Luke chapter 8 and verse 11. Don't be selfish. Give yourself fully to God. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Number 3, stop missing God's blessings. Make a decision that you are not going to miss the blessings of God. Look there in verse 5 and 6 of Haggai chapter 1. Excuse me. Look there in chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. Think carefully about your ways. You plant much, but you harvest little. You drink constantly, but you're always thirsty. You have many clothes, but you're still cold. You make money, but you lose it because your pockets are full of holes. It all falls out. What's the writer of Haggai doing there? He's saying this. One of the reasons, he says, Israel, why things are not going well for you is because you haven't placed God where he belongs. Now, this was a much more physical exercise in the Old Testament. We see in Deuteronomy 30 and the later chapters of Deuteronomy that God made a promise in this covenant that when Israel left God, their harvest would not come forth. The enemies would come in to destroy them. They would have difficulty having children, all these sort of things. Now, that's not necessarily always true in the new covenant. The Lord allows it to rain on the just and the unjust. But those outside of Christ do not have the peace that passes all understanding. Those outside the body of Christ are missing the fellowship of God's people. Those people outside the body of Christ don't have the vision. They don't have the blessing of knowing what happens when we pass from this world, of knowing the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And so when our priorities are in the wrong place, we miss out on the purpose of life. Stuff, things can never fulfill us. Nelson Rockefeller was asked by, you remember, well over 100 years ago, Nelson Rockefeller was famous for being the richest man in the world. A reporter asked him one time, he said, Mr. Rockefeller, you've got all these millions of dollars. How much money do you need? You know what he said? He thought about it, and he said, just a little more. It doesn't matter how much money you have. If money is what defines your existence, you need a little more. Elon Musk wants a little bit more money. You look at all these people, they want a little more money. When you feel empty, when you don't feel like your life is fulfilled, when you see that you're short on this, and you see that you're short on that, when you see that things are not turning out the way they should, that's God telling you something. It's not money that you're missing, it's God. It's not stuff that you're missing, it's God. It's not opportunities you're missing, it's God. God is saying, don't miss out on your blessings. Matthew 6, verse 33, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Number 4, evaluate your life. Chapter 1, verses 5 through 7, consider your ways, is how he puts it. Socrates used to say, the unexamined life is not worth living. Think about it. Consider your ways. See how it is that you're living. That's the beauty that we have with the Word of God. James talks about how the Word of God is like a mirror, and how as we read the Bible, we truly see ourselves as we are, not with this outside shell of skin, but instead we see ourselves in our relationship with God and in light of eternity. Consider your ways. Well, let's see what we need to change about our relationship with God. What needs to change as we consider our ways? First and foremost, are you and I busy with the right things? Notice I finished that question, right? I didn't just say, are you busy? Because all of us would be saying, yes, I'm busy. Are you busy with the right things? There are good things that can fill up your life that don't bring you any closer to God. There are noble pursuits you can follow that don't bring you any closer to God. What do these people need to do? Well, Haggai chapter 1, verse 8, go up into the hills, bring down the lumber, and build the house of God. Then I will be pleased and I will be glorified, Haggai says. The children of Israel needed to show God that he was important. They needed to glorify God by their actions. No, it does today. Look at your life this past week. Have you in your life glorified God? I'm not saying did you sin. I'm not saying were you really bad or were you really good. What I'm saying is this. Can you say whatever I do, whether it be a word or deed, I've done everything in the name of the Lord? Am I really putting God first and glorifying him in my life? Am I active in the right things? Now, closely, number 2, you see it there. Is God glorified in my life? When people think of who I am, when the person speaks at my funeral, will they speak of the way in which I have glorified God? Will it be a funeral in which the preacher will be pretty comfortable talking about me? Or is he going to have to be kind of, cloak, and is he going to have to kind of just go through and just overlook some things? Do you give God the glory that he deserves? Is he truly King of Kings and Lord of Lords in your life? And number 3, are you blessed by God? Look there in verse 13. God says, when the people come together and rebuild that temple, God says, I am with you. Now, that can be an interesting question in our modern age, in the Christian age, the church age. Because you see, Paul spent a lot of time in prison. And he said, I'm blessed. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Paul spent a lot of time knowing his martyrdom, his death was coming. And he said, I'm being poured out as a drink offering. The time of my departure is at hand. And yet he recognized the blessing that was there from God. Are you blessed by God? God's made a promise to his children. In Hebrews 13, he said, I will never leave you, nor shall I ever forsake you. We see in the Great Commission that Jesus has made the promise that he will be with us always. We see in Revelation chapter 2 and verse 10, the last part of that passage, be faithful even unto the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. The life of a Christian is the best life to live. The life of a child of God is the best life. We may not always have the best paneled houses. We may not always have the easiest life to live, but we know where we're going. A city with streets of gold and gates of pearl. A city in which there's no sun because the Lord is there and he provides the light. And so what I want us to notice in this lesson is the importance of priorities. Going back to Ian Bound's book, it may not matter how much money you have to be a success. It may not matter how much sincerity you have to be a success. It may not matter how many communication skills you have or how much luck you have to be a success. What matters is what you place first within your heart. And that needs to be Jesus. He is our highest priority.